The U.S.-China trade war is eroding Beijing's incentive to work with Washington and pressuring Pyongyang give up its nuclear weapons program, according to diplomatic observers. With Washington announcing fresh tariffs on Chinese products on Monday, China was likely to use the denuclearization issue as a bargaining chip in the trade war with the United States, they said, despite Beijing saying earlier that the two issues were separate. Kazianis, director of defense studies at the Washington-based Center for the National Interest, said the two issues were tied. When Trump came into the office, his goal was to take on China, but as North Korea started to test its intercontinental ballistic missiles and upgraded nuclear weapons targeting the U.S., he needed China's help to contain North Korea to denuclearize, Kazianis said. What incentive does Beijing have to help on the North Korean issue? It has none now. Kazianis of the Center for the National Interest, but when Trump is hitting China with tariffs, China is less likely to help the president containing North Korea. I think we can say the maximum pressure is over. Trump on Monday announced a new batch of tariffs on $200 billion worth of Chinese imports to the U.S., significantly widening the scope of a trade war that American companies are fighting to contain and Beijing has vowed to continue retaliating against. Chinese officials have previously said the trade confrontation is not related to the Korean peninsula, and that Beijing would continue to seek denuclearization. But it also said imposing sanctions would not help Pyongyang, and has been engaging the reclusive state in economic talks. Trump has since accused China of not pushing North Korea hard enough to advance the process. Chinese Rust Belt province pushes for new road and rail links to North Korea and beyond to the south. Kazianis said China was likely to use the denuclearization issue as a bargaining chip with the U.S. and had the power to slow the process down. What incentive does Beijing have to help on the North Korean issue? It has none now, he said. North Korea is becoming a place where the great powers compete for greater influence against one another. Woo Sung-chan, a research fellow at the Yonsei Institute for North Korean Studies in Seoul, also said the trade war would have a negative impact on the denuclearization process. From a traditional realist's approach, inter-Korean relations often become a dependent variable of U.S.-China relations. As China is also an important actor on denuclearization, China might use the North Korean issue as leverage against the U.S., Woo said. But he said South Korean President Moon Jae-in was trying to overcome the risk of trade war fallout by improving ties with the North. When Seoul is actively acting as an actor, the impact of the great power rivalry is likely to be limited, Woo said. After all, China's top priority in the region is stabilization of the Korean peninsula for the continuation of domestic economic growth. It would also want a settlement of permanent peace on the peninsula. Moon and Kim begin landmark summit after limousine ride through streets of North Korea capital Pyongyang. Moon and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un are in Pyongyang to discuss denuclearization and steps towards declaring an end to the Korean War. The summit comes after Trump canceled a trip by U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to Pyongyang last month, citing slow progress on denuclearization. For Pyongyang, denuclearization means phased and synchronized measures that involve compensation from the international community as it gradually gives up its nuclear weapons. But the U.S. has insisted on applying maximum pressure on the regime. Kazianis said that despite the difficulties, progress could still be made if Pyongyang showed it was sincere about the process, such as submitting a list of the warheads it would withdraw. Some of the UN Security Council resolutions may be lifted, and Seoul may also lift its unilateral sanctions if North Korea is making some concessions, he said.